I have a 1934 Chevy Master 5-window coupe, and I wanted to make steel framing instead of the wood. So I made steel A-pillars, which is the front door frame. The first thing I did was take poster board and made a paper or poster board pattern of the 4 sides of the pillars that I had. These are original A-pillars from 1934. Those pillars have a back side that faces the rear of the car. Then the side, I will call it the inside, that faces the center of the car. Then there is the outside, which is closest to the body sheet metal of the car. And then opposite of the rear or back of the pillar is the front of the pillar, which faces towards the firewall and front tires or front of the car. Using those sort of terms, let's talk about it. I made those paper poster board patterns. Now, the original wood has this stepped area where you can see a thin area that is cut down on the surface of the rear side of the pillar, and the original body has a flange, and you can see that that flange is the same thickness as the cut down area, so that when you put the pillar into its place for the nails, it lines up with that quite nicely. I don't need to recreate that on the steel, and I will tell you why in a little bit, but I just went ahead and made a steel pillar without that cut down area. That would be extra complicated. So there you have it. There's a good example of how the wood would have originally looked in the car. On the passenger side here, I'm showing the poster board template that I made. You can follow the outside line of the door, but then check it with that flange. Notice the flange where the wood and steel is going to go does not meet up with the sheet metal on the outside of the car. Instead, it meets up on a stepped flange that is there. The interesting thing is that since both sides are the same, you can simply turn the poster board over and copy it again with a mirror image of the pattern, and it will be the same. So you're going to be able to make 2 of the same pieces out of the same poster board template. So here I have shown the pieces of steel laid out that I had cut out using those poster board templates. This first piece, I put a little bend in the end so it would follow the tip of that rear side of the wood, and then I went to the car and I checked, and it really does match up quite nice. Where there are areas where it doesn't quite line up to the corner of that flange, I will simply add some sheet metal so that I have good connection areas. This piece is for the outside, and of course the sheet metal I'm using is flat, so I'm going to have to put a curve in it, and I used my vise and put a curve in it. Here you have the rear piece laying flat on a table, and you can see that the piece I have standing up vertical needs to put a curve in it. There you have part of the curve made. All the way it follows along until we get to the upper edge here near the top end of that, and it needs a little bit more curve. And here I finally have it curved correctly, and that follows that quite nicely. I'm now going to weld it up. It's important that that plate that you're using for the rear surface of that is perfectly flat when you weld up the other piece. So I've welded it up there and laid it up next to the original, and it looks very, very similar. Of course, like I said, that rear surface needs to be perfectly flat when you weld up. Otherwise, you'll have a curved rear piece, and it's got to be perfectly flat. Now I take 3 pieces, and the reason 3 pieces to form the inside surface is because it's a compound curve in a couple of places. So this lower piece, well, I'm at the middle piece there. That middle piece, you can see there's a cutout there, and it changes the angle right there. So that middle piece is going to have to take a little bit of a bend. And then the very top piece is going to take another bend as well. So here I have the lower piece fit and bent properly. Got to do a little blacksmith work. Where I drew the black line on the middle piece, I put a little bit of a kink in the middle piece, and you'll see how it lines up quite nicely. So there's the lower piece. And then the middle piece where I have the black line, I put a bend in it right across the line, and that lines up nice, but that's at a slanted angle. And then the top piece has that little lip that comes up and then flat out towards the top. So I will weld those up, and there we have them welded up. And you gotta sort of say, well, now are they the right distance apart? Well, I'm going to take the fourth side and use that as a guide to see if I need to tweak the pieces out or in a little bit to get them to line up, and it fits just about perfect, give or take a few millimeters. So you do a lot of checking and rechecking and so forth, and you compare. If you do not have the original wood, then comparison will be difficult, but the basic shape is that the side facing the rear of the car is perfectly flat. The side facing the sheet metal, which would be the outside, is curved to follow the shape of the rear piece. The same is true for the inside piece, and then the fourth side, which is the front piece, is just going to have to create a connection between those pieces. The upper part of this A-pillar, above the top hinge pocket, has a strange shape, and that's because that little thin section at the top needs to fit up inside of the A-pillar next to the windshield, and there's not much room, so it has to slide up inside there from below, and it has an unusual shape, and it also has a pocket for allowing some of the metal flange of the windshield to fit. Well, here I'm comparing pieces. Everything's lining up. This is my second attempt. The first attempt was on the passenger side. The second attempt is here on the driver's side. There's the pocket I cut out, and what I'm pointing at now on the original wood is an area that's literally drilled out and then cut out probably with a chisel because it's very roughly hewn, and that's going to be welded in place right there. I'll show you in a second here how I've tack welded it, and the pieces line up. Time for a test fit. I finished welding that piece and then placed another piece on the open side to complete all four sides of the upper part of the A-pillar. I then dressed the piece, and here you have a finished product here. I took some metal to make the pockets for the hinges and bent it in the vise with a hammer, measuring carefully and then cutting the pocket opening to the right place so that it fits the hinge on the trim piece. Once I placed those in and put them in place, I then welded them up. Test fit, of course, with a tack weld, and everything looks okay. I then dressed my welds, and now we're ready for comparison. Here they are compared to the wood pieces. Things line up the same. The black trim pieces on the outer edges of the table are actually the hinges and front door frame trim. The hinges are attached to the trim, so I have to make sure that everything lines up and fits properly. Now it's ready for installation in the car.